Here we go then, the conclusion to the most entertaining Grand Prix since the last one, as Lewis Hamilton, the GOAT, goes up against Max Verstappen in this final Grand Prix meeting of the 2021 F1 calendar in Abu Dhabi. What a season it has been, with twists and turns in every race as Max fights for his first ever F1 championship and Lewis looks to move one ahead of Michael Schumacher, much to the dismay of Bernie Ecclestone. Should Hamilton have stuck his nose up the inside of cops? Was Max at fault when he parked his car on Hamilton's helmet? And why did Lewis Hamilton drive into the back of his rival when all that space was on the left? Here to look back at this thrilling F1 campaign is Win or Learn regular Chris and Win or Learn guest and long-time F1 fan Phil. Gentlemen, welcome, and let's kick it off straight away. Who wins the title this weekend?
I'm going to go Lewis just because I am Team Lewis. I am backing him experience-wise. Mercedes have come good. They've got the power, mate. I swear they have. And I'm rooting, I'm nervous. And I know, Phil, you're in the same camp.
Yeah, same here. So Hamilton, when he came in 2007, it sort of got me back interested in Formula One again. It'd been a few barren years for Brits especially. And I've got to back him, and I think he's going to do it. I think he's got the tools, he's got the car, he's got the calmness. He's just got to avoid the Max missile. That's the problem.
That's what I'm thinking. The only, obviously, I want Lewis to win, being a Brit. I don't dislike Max in any way, shape, or form. Even if he won, it would, I think, great for F1. But I just think that Max has got absolutely nothing to lose, and his temperament anyway is aggressive, and just he will risk it all for the win. And knowing that he will win, even if they both don't finish, is just clearly going to be his mentality going into the first few corners, surely.
I've got to say though, right, I'm being honest, genuine opinion, if Max wins, I would rather Lewis did, and I'm in his camp, but if Max won it, he does deserve it, I wouldn't be that upset. But it's just but the season's been amazing, and I feel like we've got two camps on this call. We've got the Drive to Survive era in me and Jake, who I just got into F1 through the Netflix series. And Phil, you've been watching it for you're a hardcore fan, I know you are. We speak about it so much. And just in terms of the title race, it's been epic. It's been the first one I've probably watched in full. Has it been one of the most gripping that you've seen?
I think so. Obviously the fresher ones in your mind always seem more epic, but I think, the last time we saw this close was Lewis versus Rosberg, and that was it into team. It got stressful, it got nasty, but it never got overly worried that one of them was just going to smash into the other one and take him out. I think, back in you had Hakkinen and Schumacher way back in the 2000s and late 90s. But, and Schumacher had that reputation of being a bit dirty and a bit willing to do everything, a bit like Max. But I think the exposure through things like Drive to Survive and the social media and the teams going at it, in the media and whatever, I think this is it's been spicier than it's ever been. And I think, to go in equal points, Max, as you say, nothing to lose. Lewis with all the skills, all the experience, I can't think of anywhere that this was more epic than this build-up.
I'll tell you what I've loved as well. It's like you say, not just the two drivers, the Toto, Horner beef, just everything. There's just so many rivalries on different levels through teams. I love listening to the radios when they're contesting who was at fault in the different corners. Obviously no one's ever going to concede that they were ever at fault. And it's just been so fascinating to, everyone gives Massey a hard time. And I felt really bad for him this season and having to just deal with emails, voicemails and stuff like that. But yeah, going back to who wins this weekend, do you feel like if Lewis wins this time, he might retire?
I can't see it.
Nah, I can't see it. He's got the new 2-year contract, and I suppose he's won back with the old cars. He's absolutely blitzed this era, and it now moves into a third era. I don't know if he'll be the only driver to win world championships under 3 really different regs. He might be close to that. Proving his skills. I think maybe next year, if Mercedes isn't up there, he might call it a year early. I can't see him retire. I can't, but stranger things have happened. I think he'll go at least one more.
The only thing I'm
Thing
thinking
is, I
as well
spoke to you about this. I spoke to you about this the other day, Phil. Like, it's this whole thing about having the most championships. Like, Lewis isn't going to rest until he's got the most. That's just like any sports person at the pinnacle of their power. You know, like he wants
Yeah.
8 because he wants to be the best ever. He's broke every other record. However, if Verstappen wins, he's 23. That's 1 on the board. Lewis is still at 7. And every year after that, he's eating away with a long career ahead of him.
Yeah.
Whereas if Lewis wins, that's another 1 on his tally, and it's 1 chalked off of Max's, and it's putting him into a great position going into the new era.
Yeah, definitely. And he loves Formula One, Lewis does. He loves driving. I know he's got all these other interests, but his eyes only sparkle in interviews when you talk to him about driving. All the other stuff, whatever. He's a driver and he absolutely loves it. And, you know, why would you're driving for the best team you got, you know, you've got a platform to do all your other stuff from. I just don't think he'd give it up this soon.
If he doesn't win this weekend and then George Russell joins the team and then in his final season finishes ahead of Hamilton, or, you know, just shows to be that he's the new kid on the Mercedes team, do you feel like people's memories are very recent, that those 2 potential scenarios would sort of hang over Lewis, and that might play on his mind behind, like, I've got the 8 championships, that I'm not going to fight Russell and ever get into any debate around that, and, you know, maybe potentially move on? I don't think so, but it's always playing in the back of my mind. Like you say, he wants that 8, and if he gets it, is it like finishing on the highest high possible in that sport?
Yeah, I mean, Russell coming into the team is a big dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, we spoke about this, didn't we, Chris, about whether George is somewhere in his contract going to play second fiddle for the last 2 years, learn the craft, learn the team, and then be allowed to, you know, do it once Hamilton's gone. Mercedes don't really play like that, but, you know, Lewis doesn't like to be beaten, right? You've seen it on track, actually. If he's due for some new tyres and you know, whoever's coming up behind is going to overtake him, he'd rather go in the pits and change. He doesn't like being even overtaken on track. So, you know, if a young pretender comes in and starts beating him regularly, yeah, you might see him just go, well, I've driven the new car. I don't like these new cars. It's not Formula One for me. He's got a ready-made excuse, right? So, you know, maybe he'll play that way.
Let's go back to a couple of incidents throughout the season. Let's go to the most recent one. Lap 37 last week. Hamilton going into the back of Max Verstappen. Now, who's at fault here? Because Max is clearly trying to play the DRS game. Lewis obviously knows he's trying to play that game, but also claims that he didn't know he got the call to overtake. So how would he play that DRS game if he didn't give the call? There was so much space on the inside of that to just go round him. What was your take on that, Chris?
I don't know. I think there's a reason why he got those penalties. Like, it was the maddest race. I was texting you all race, and I was texting Phil. So I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like, it was mad. Like, it was like just the restarts, the crashes. I don't know whether he brake tested him, but he wasn't playing ball. You know, whether it was strategy to try and get Lewis past him so he could then DRS him again. Like, I mean, Mercedes know that that's fair game, but it was just a massive. I mean, the radio messages. You know, I'm not an expert, Phil. You're way more on the ball with this kind of stuff, but like, it does seem like there was a huge mix-up, and the FIA and race control were just at 6s and 7s that day.
Yeah, there's definitely some stuff to learn about the communication, but you're right. You know, Hamilton knew something was going on. I mean, people have been saying that, you know, normally you would slow down without braking and move right to the side. And there does look to be quite a lot of space, but because the track's sort of going left, you know, Verstappen's he's Verstappen, right? You don't overtake him lightly. I think Lewis probably had guessed, you know, Lewis is a sharp driver. He's been there, done it for, you know, tons of seasons. He knows something's going on there. I don't think you could give him the excuse that, or maybe Max had seen an accident round the corner or something like that. I think he knew what was going on. But, you know, brake testing is a massive, it's the basics. You do not do it. And, you know, it's naughty. He probably didn't do it to try and get a crash, but he certainly was messing around. And both of them knew the score. And he just added another layer of craziness to what was already a crazy race. And the annoying thing is, I suppose, Max doesn't really need to do it. the move he did from the restart down the inside of both Ocon and Hamilton. I mean, that's a great move from any driver on any track on any day. So it's sort of just annoying to see these things. And obviously the media are going to play it for all it's worth. But I think he could do it without messing around like that. I think he was always going to get beat last weekend. And he probably should have just accepted it and known that, you're going to take it to the final race. But he's Max. He's never going to give up.
In the press conference for this weekend, Max is saying that he's treated differently. Now, obviously, we see this in the Premier League all the time. Before a big match, Mourinho will come out and say, referees treat us differently to play mind game. Do you think that's a mind game tactic, or do you think actually that there have been some decisions, be it penalties, Phil, this season that really have been a little unfair on Max? Or do you feel like actually each time you've seen it, you think, yeah, that's a fair assessment?
I think it's balanced out. It's an easy psychological game to play. I mean, Hamilton certainly during his career has had stuff go against him, but as a Hamilton fan, it's hard to approach that, without some bias. But it's part of both the Mercedes game and the Red Bull game. Red Bull can give it that, we're being harshly punished, but Mercedes have been clever in their incidents to sort of trick the stewards maybe into having this view of Max that he is dangerous and he does need to be, reined in. But I think the stewards are at fault on their own anyway for the Brazil incident. You can't just not brake and run off the track and run whoever. That's not racing. It's not because, and I don't know, everybody's like, well, just get, if you put gravel back on every corner, then it's going to stop that happening. And true, but, I think almost last week's penalty was kind of making up for Brazil, maybe. And I guess it just balances itself out at the end of the season.
Yeah. I mean, look at Silverstone, right? I mean, Hamilton got a 10-second penalty in the pits and still won that, and that was an amazing race. But that race was decided on the first lap between those two. And that was, I mean, I say 50-50 as a Hamilton fan, but he got punished. And I think that was fair because Verstappen was out of the race. If they both drive on, it's very different. I don't think anybody gets a punishment, but that was a massive pendulum shift, and then Hamilton had sort of a good middle period of the season, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, if you play that out like Brazil rules, Hamilton went down the inside and Max should have seen him coming and move over and given him a bit more space. And if they'd have both run off, then they'd have both run off. He wouldn't give the corner, and Lewis has learned to go, well, it's Max on the inside. I'm just going to have to watch what he does because I'm probably going to go off track. And this is where Max may be too uncompromising. And if he loses the championship, just as Lewis has always had to learn when he's had, tough times and missed out by 1 point in his first year, he's had to go back and go, what could I do better? And if Max doesn't learn, if he loses and doesn't learn, then, he's not a great world champion. If he wins and doesn't learn, well, he's been let off probably too lightly this season. But, maybe he'll come around again next season, karma, and maybe things won't go his way again. So it's a tough one.
I think it's a fair assessment to say that maybe 5 or 6 races ago, everyone was saying it was Max is going to be F1 champion. It's just from this point on, it's going to be too difficult. Then there was a Hamilton power change, which basically blasted through the whole field. And since then, it's just been clawing back points, which obviously means that going into the final one, he's got the momentum going into it. But that was obviously a key moment in the championship, Phil.
Key in terms of mentality, I think more than anything, gave the whole Mercedes team the lift and that drive. That was a special drive, and it equally it gave Red Bull the kind of, oh my God, we haven't got this. But absolutely a key moment. And me and Chris have talked about this. Those two, Max and Lewis, Bottas had an equal car. He didn't have the new engine, but the Mercedes is a good car. He's nowhere and Perez is nowhere. And these two are just pushing them on. But yeah, that Brazil was the real boost that Hamilton goes, right, I've got this. And I don't think he had that until Brazil.
Yeah.
He just DRS'd the fuck out of everybody.
I mean, it just breezes past. It's hilarious in the end. You've got to be another team going, what are we doing? This guy's just going past us like we're stood still.
But they just all move as well because they're not interested. They're all just like, I'm just moving out of the way. So he did go from 20-1, but 20-3, they were all just like, see ya, like, goodbye. Like,
yeah. So I spoke to like, I mean, me and Jake, a couple of our mates are like Max fans, which is fair enough. They're right, a sport. But like in that race, like saying Hamilton had the best engine and there was a long straight, that doesn't fly for me, and it's a biased opinion. However, starting at the back, you're in a group of rookies in the midfield where this battle is going on. There are crash hazards everywhere.
It's a mess.
Right, and you've got to get through that safely. You've then got to take the field, and you've then got to get your head switched on. And it was just unbelievable. I mean, he clearly had the best car in the field, but there was an immense amount of skill, composure.
Yeah, and he's got to keep the tyres alive whilst going past all those people as well. He's got to pick his moments. He can't just drive past at any corner because he needs the tyres for when he arrives with Max. So, yeah, you've got to have a good car, but you've got to have one of the best drivers because, you're not going to do it with just one or the other.
Let's just touch on a couple of other teams throughout the season. I texted you, Slater, and said Ferrari would be back this season. They're not obviously quite back, but much better this season from where they are. They're obviously going to finish third in constructors. Great battle with McLaren. Do you feel like Ferrari are getting closer to challenging the top field from what you've seen over the last sort of 6-7 years, their demise and then sort of the little rebounds this season?
Yeah, they're coming back. I mean, they had this odd season where they seem to be punished for having an engine that everybody believes was not legal when they suddenly got found out. I think it was Austin 2018 maybe, when they suddenly fell away and really spent a season in the wilderness, presumably for some form of punishment that nobody ever found out about. So they are coming back, and it's great to see, and it's great that McLaren, Ferrari, even Renault seem to have, or Alpine have their moments with Ocon winning a race and Alonso usually being pretty good in practice and things like that. So it's great to see the battle, but Ferrari's a big draw and you need them back up there. And it's, Leclerc is clearly a great driver. I really like Sainz as well. And to see them coming through and, doing a decent job, and hopefully with these new regs next year, really starting off from a strong footing and being up there. And challenging Red Bull and not leaving it, and Mercedes, and not leaving it just as a two-way fight that, everybody's just ducking out the way to not get involved, like you say.
Thing is with Ferrari and McLaren, like after watching the Netflix series, like all four of those drivers, Danny Rick, Lando, Sainz, Leclerc, they're great guys.
Yeah.
Like they come across so well. And it's almost like, it's like you say, Ferrari for me, 29, whenever I think about, if anyone said to me F1, without watching it for the past year, I would just think of Ferraris as the flagship and Schumacher. Like those are just the two things, like if I was playing, whatever that game's called, where you're describing something, like you just go Ferrari, Schumacher, F1. That would be it. Obviously, we're moving into a different era, but you do need those guys back because, it's like you say, they're just so important.
It's still the best looking car on the grid as well. Like, it's just like iconic, isn't it? I wanted to ask you both who your driver of the season has been outside of Lewis and Max, like one that you've really enjoyed, had a great season. For me, Lando Norris has been my favourite driver of the season. I mean, doing wonders at McLaren, still so young, British, and really can get to the top, I think, definitely in a couple of years' time. McLaren as well, going through strength to strength through the last couple of seasons, going from 0 points to now challenging for third in constructors. So Norris for me. What about you, Chris?
Probably Mazepin.
Just for the meme. Just for the
meme. No, jokes aside, I mean, I would have, if you hadn't said Lewis or Max, then I would have actually said Max.
Yeah.
Just because I do think that he's pulled that team and just gone to a new level himself. Like it's Lewis versus Max now. It's not just Lewis, but I would say Lando as well. He hasn't had a great end to the season, but I think after Russia, like he's just been amazing, and he's like such a cool character. And you think between him and Russell, you're going to have a great British driving future.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd go Lando if you hadn't. weirdly, without Lando, I think weirdly Ocon has had a really good season. He's up against Alonso, who isn't as young as he used to be, but he's a good driver, and he's had the win in Hungary, which he held on for. And I think he's put in some really good performances, underrated and understated. But I think Lando had really, for me, if he'd have won in Russia, if he'd have held it on for those last couple of laps, you could say it was a stellar season for him. I think he's probably dropped off a bit since Russia, since that sort of disappointment. But the future for Brits is in good hands with Russell and Lando, so Ocon as an outsider, I think.
Mate, we forgot about Gasly. I know, Jake, you're a massive Gasly fanboy.
He's my favourite driver on the grid outside Lewis. But he has no right to be finishing on a consistent basis. He's always getting into Q3. He's always sticking it near 3 or 4. He's finished on podium and whatnot this season. And I was going to go into and say the mix of drivers and teams on the podiums this year has been so good to see. Vettel could genuinely finish 3rd. Alonso could finish 3rd. There's so many different teams back there that are competing with. It's not just Ferrari and McLaren are going for those 3rd and 4th spots. And look, we'll wrap it up now. We won't go into it in too much detail. We might have to do another episode before next season. But what's your sort of driver to watch next season? I think it's quite interesting, Bottas going to Alpha. I actually do think Bottas is a good driver. Playing second to Hamilton isn't easy. He always has to give space. He's obviously not looked at as the number 1 driver in that team. I think he will be going into obviously Alfa Romeo, and I do think he's going to have a good season next year.
Yeah, I think the draw for next year is the new regs. So, the dog ugly car that they gave as a show car was horrific. But if you see the ones mocked up in the real liveries, they look pretty good. The new big tires or big rims on the tires. And the chance of somebody doing a Brawn 2009 and really finding a little loophole in the regs, and could you get Bottas in an Alfa Romeo winning the World Championship? Yeah, possibly, it could happen. Not putting my money behind Mazepin, but anything could happen. You expect Mercedes because of their budget. You'd expect Red Bull because of the genius that is Adrian Newey, and an aero regs car should suit him. But they were saying earlier, that Red Bull have gone for this high rake approach, and next year it's low rake because it's ground effect and sticking the car to the track with the aero. So, it's anybody's game next year, and you could get even more surprise results with, Vettels and Strolls and, people like that really mixing it with the front runners. And I think everybody would be hoping for that. We don't want just another, Mercedes or Red Bull out front, owning it. So, I think that's a real driver for next year. And can Lewis do his, a 3rd era of a world championship? I think that would be incredible.
Yeah. Slater, I know you're going to say Russell at Mercedes.
I literally I didn't want to answer it because I know that Phil will give a very well-rounded answer based on what's going to happen. But for me, it's just I'm a mainstream fan, and I just want to see how Russell's going to get on. I'm still gutted he never won that race in Bahrain, But I mean, it's Phil to play for. I mean, it's like Phil said, the regs coming in. Let's see what happens, but we've got to roll on Sunday first.
Yeah, exactly that. Roll on Sunday. Hopefully Lewis does it, but like we say, if Max wins it, then I think he'll finish on more wins and then Hamilton anyway. Might be 9 to 8 or something like that. But great season. Thanks for coming on, Phil. Really appreciate your insight. Absolutely, actually really enjoyed that. So we'll definitely do one before the start of next season and at various points through next year if you're up for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Slater, as always, absolute pleasure.